Hey folks, I'm Dennis. Thanks for watching my video. Today I'm going to show you how to make a jig for cutting small angles on a miter saw. Let's get started. There are a couple of different ways of doing this. You'll see other videos showing how to make a jig at 45 degrees. Some of them are at 90 degrees. I'm going to make one today that's built at 90 degrees, and I'll show you why when we get it on the miter saw. But if you make your jig at 90, then the scale on your miter saw actually reads exact. So if you want to cut a 5-degree angle, say to taper a table leg, then you, with a 90-degree jig like this we're going to build, then you set your miter saw to 5 degrees. So you don't have to do any math. It works out to just follow the scale. So I had a small piece of 3/4 Baltic birch laying around the shop, and I decided to use that for this. It'll be good and stable. Because of the size piece that I had, I cut this to 11.5 by 11.5 with square base. I made sure it was good and square before I got started. Checked it with my square, it's good. I'll recheck it again after I put it all together. And then I cut 2 strips 4 inches wide, and these are 14 inches long. I intentionally cut them longer than the base so that it gives me some clamping area on one side, and then gives me a little bit longer support for my stock when I'm cutting an angle off of it on the other side. So the rest of it's real easy. I'm just gonna glue and clamp it and make sure it's good and square, or glue and brad it rather, make sure it's good and square once it's together. I'll take the first one, and this table is good and flat, so I can use it as my surface to mate everything up. I'm going to just make sure that those 2 edges are good and flush. I'm shooting 1.25 inch 18-gauge brads. Shoot a couple more in there. Then I'm just going to take the other piece and glue it on and brad it flush here and overlapping the end of this first piece. So I've got a nice square corner here. Now just go around and wipe off the squeeze out. And then you want to check it for square. You want it to be square top and bottom. If you do use brads, make sure that they're all flush. I've got these 16.5 inch long square legs, or 1.5 inch square. On this particular leg, I want to have a taper. So I want my taper to come up to 3 inches from the end. So I'm just going to put a mark right there. Then what I like to do is put a sacrificial board behind the jig. You don't have to do that. You can make a mark here and line up your piece on every cut. The problem is when you're cutting a taper, if you're off just a little bit, they're not going to line up all the way around the leg. But if you use a sacrificial piece, you can use it as a stop. And so you'll put the base of your leg up against the stop every time, and it'll line up all the way around. And I like to make it about the same size as the fence on the jig. So in this case, you know, it was 14 plus 3/4, so 14 3/4 thereabouts. That just makes it easier for clamping. And then roughly the same height. This is a 3.5 inch board, and I got 4 inch fence, so it'll work out just fine. The reason that I prefer a 90-degree jig over a 45-degree jig, they both have their uses. I don't have to worry about making sure I've got my angle right. I'm just going to use my scale. My scale is set up and aligned, so I can just use my miter scale for the leg angle that I want. I want a 5-degree angle. So I'm going to set my indicator on 5 degrees and lock down the miter saw. Then I can take my leg with the mark on it. I'm gonna zoom this in a little bit for you. So I'm just holding this right now before I clamp it. I'll put clamps on in a minute. I've got my sacrificial piece back here for the stop, and I'm gonna slide it out a little bit further, but right now I want the blade to be able to go down beside it. And I've got my leg with my 3-inch mark right here. So then what I'm gonna do is bring that down and see where my blade's gonna hit. Right now I'm just a touch shy, so I'm gonna slide my jig over, and then right there should put that taper coming up and stopping right on my 3-inch mark. So then what I can do is clamp all this down. Slide that out of the way for a second. I'm gonna slide my stop board over here so I can cut through it once I'm clamped into place. Then I'm going to take just a couple of small bar clamps, and without moving my jig, I'm going to clamp it down, making sure I'm not in the way of the blade at all. Alright, so now all that's clamped into place, and it's also safer to clamp your stock into place. You may not have to, but I prefer to clamp it into place. So then you just make sure your stock is on your fence, on your jig, up against your sacrificial stop block, and then put a clamp on it. It's the other reason I like to have a little bit more fence back here. You could have your base extend on back to here if you want to, but you just want to have enough depth to where you can clamp and not get in the way of your blade at all. So everything's clamped into place. Now, you just don't want to move anything else. Since your stop block is in place, all you got to do is turn your leg, get it in place again, clamp it, and then take the other cut. Now, your tapers line up, and you got a nice double tapered leg. So you could go ahead and do the other two sides if you wanted to. Thanks for watching my video, folks. Give me a thumbs up if you would, and subscribe to my channel. I hope to see you back real soon. Take care. God bless you.